Welcome to another episode of Mental Health Mondays, where we talk to guests who are either mental health professionals, advocates for mental health, or those that live with or experience a mental health challenge. And just as a reminder, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you mash down that button that so that you can subscribe and you don't miss another episode. Or if you're watching this on Facebook or LinkedIn, make sure you're following us. Most likely you're already following us, but if you're not, make sure you follow us. And if you feel like any of this information as we talk today would be helpful for somebody else, make sure you share it. That's what we're here all about, is giving resources to those that need it the most. So without further ado, I am going to bring up my guest for today. Chris, thank you so much for joining me.
Kel, pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited to talk with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Certainly. Well, I live in New Ulm, Minnesota with my wife, Becky, and our 3 kids. We've been a family since 2005 when Becky made me the luckiest guy in the world. Our kids are 13. I have a 13-year-old boy and 10-year-old twins, boy and girl. Becky and I are both teachers. She teaches in the public school here in New Ulm. I teach online. I've been teaching online since 2012. So I even predate the pandemic. So it is possible to teach online. I've been doing it for 11 years, and so it works pretty well. But the reason why I'm here today is because I'm a survivor, a type of flesh-eating bacteria called necrotizing fasciitis. And through that experience, I developed what I call the attitude of gratitude. And I have become a professional speaker and co-author. And I talk with groups about how they can increase their gratitude, positivity, and resilience in 3 easy steps and make themselves superheroes in their own communities, for lack of a better term.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And what do you teach, like a specific grade, or what do you teach online?
I am a special education teacher with licenses in learning disabilities and autism spectrum disorder. So I work with grades 6th through 8th, and I have a math class. I push into other teachers' classes, but I also teach social skills, executive functioning skills, just trying to help our future leaders be the best leaders they can be.
Awesome. That's amazing. And yeah, I love that you said pre-pandemic. You were teaching before it was like a thing to be able to teach
Yes.
online. That's awesome.
Yeah, people think that, oh, it's just like you get online, you get on Zoom and you just do your lesson. It's a lot more involved than that. There's a lot of salesmanship that goes into teaching online that actually has helped me in my speaking adventures, because a lot of my ventures are virtual. So whereas some speakers will have started out speaking and they maybe have spoken once online, I've been doing it since 2012. So I'm a little ahead of the curve there.
Yeah, definitely. I know that even when I have a 7-year-old, and they ended up sending them home in 2020. And that was, I mean, a very unique experience as a parent
Yeah.
to have him here while I was trying to work and then trying to help him. I know the teachers tried as much as they could, but it was new to them also. So yeah, that's definitely an adventure.
Yes, indeed.
So you had this flesh-eating bacteria, you said, right? It froze a smidget when you were talking about that. But what ended up happening as far as all of, I mean, obviously you're here with us today. So what happened specifically?
Well, it was the most remarkable thing, Kelly. I scratched my hand on my garage wall. I know, shocking. What was I thinking doing such a thing? But it happened. I scratched my hand as I was helping Becky get the kids into the van as she drove them to preschool and school. And I looked at it and it wasn't bleeding. I quoted one of my favorite movies of all time and said, "'Tis but a scratch." And then finished my duty, put them in the car seat, kissed them all goodbye, went back into the house, washed off my hand, put a bandage on it, and then started my day teaching. No big deal. 3 days later, though, I wake up and I see a lacrosse ball sized bump on my right elbow. I go to the urgent care clinic. The doctor says it might have been bursitis. I might have inflamed the bursa sac in the elbow, which caused it to develop that bump. And he just suggested I keep an eye on it. So I did. And I kept an eye on it as the bump grew and grew and grew until my right arm was 3 times the size of my left. I looked like the Incredible Hulk in mid-transformation. It was comical, I thought, but also very jarring and disturbing. So we, of course, went to the emergency room. They admitted me, kept me overnight. And then that doctor told me something I will never forget, Kelly. She said, "Mr. Gordon, this is beyond us. We can do nothing more for you here. Where do you want to go?" Well, I live in Minnesota. Rochester is 2 hours to the east. Rochester is the home of the Mayo Clinic. So I say Mayo. And not only is Rochester the home of Mayo, it's also the home to Bill and Dee, my wife's parents. So I knew that the kids, and Max the dog would have a place to stay for I was sure, few days this would take to resolve itself. I mean, me being a special education teacher with my vast medical knowledge, knew exactly how long this would take. So they load me onto the plane, fly me to Rochester, and it's there that they officially diagnosed me with necrotizing fasciitis. As soon as they know what they're dealing with, they get me into my first of 15 surgeries. And the next thing I know, it's 5 days later. I was told that skin off my right arm, shoulder, chest, and back was removed. A piece of my thigh had been taken from a piece of my left thigh had been taken and placed on my right hand and arm. Since this is my arm and my thigh on my hand, I call this my thand. Copyright pending, because the infection had gotten so far into the arm that I almost lost my arm.
Wow.
And in fact, at that point, doctors told me that I had a 30% chance of survival, let alone keeping the arm. But obviously, spoiler alert, they did. They were able to save both my arm and me, but there were changes. I had, in fact, had to have a muscle removed from my left thigh because the wound that was left, the hole that was left from the fan, was so large they couldn't close my leg naturally. So they installed knobs on either side of the wound, and then a shoestring contraption called a Jacob's ladder on the inside of the wound so they can tighten the knobs and the wound over time. And then they also had all these areas that were exposed because of the debridement of the infected skin and tissue. So they had to take skin graft samplings from my thighs and my back. And eventually, over the course of a few weeks, they would put those skin graft harvested those samplings on my exposed areas. And so I like I said before, I had 15 surgeries. Some of those were during my 5-day coma. Some of those were after, like in the next couple of weeks. But while my life was saved and my body was altered, and the bacteria, the flesh-eating bacteria, was gone, I started feeling what I call personal bacteria seep into my mind. Those were questions about what was my life going to be like now. For example, what was I going to be able to do physically if when I healed fully, if I healed fully? What was my mindset going to be like when dealing with struggles, when talking with Becky, the kids, our family members and friends, colleagues, neighbors, strangers? How was I going to handle everyday life? And then how were we going to bounce back from this financially? As it turned out, I missed an entire quarter of the school year, the last quarter of the school year, because of my hospitalization. I had all these questions in my head, and I had no answers. This sent me down a spiral because, like I said, I had no answers. And if I don't have any answers, I can't find the solution and I can't fix it. And while the doctors healed my body, my mind is a whole different playground. But thankfully, I didn't have a lot of time to ruminate on those questions. And that bacteria did not have a lot of time to fester in there, because during one of her daily visits, Becky started telling me about all the things that our families and friends and neighbors were doing for us. For example, our neighbors were shoveling our walkways and snow blowing our driveways. This happened in late March, early April of 2015. So while it's technically spring on the calendar, it's basically winter round 2 in Minnesota. We had friends and the police department watching over the house, because when you live in a small town, the phrase flesh-eating bacteria spreads almost as quickly as the bacteria itself. So everyone knew what was going on. In Rochester, people were stopping by my in-laws' house to drop off food and toys and even play with the kids. My brother, who lives in Michigan, he flew out the second Becky told him what I was dealing with, and spent the next week and a half in Rochester, sometimes sleeping in the hotel, so he could get the latest updates on my condition. A friend of Becky's from high school even started a GoFundMe account that raised well over enough money to offset my lost wages that were incurred for my hospitalization. Becky told me all of these things that people are doing for us. And I felt that personal bacteria wash away. And what was left is what I now call the attitude of gratitude, or TAG for short. And it started with 3 questions. The first question was, what good things did I have in my life? Now, Kelly, I'm going to ask you, when I ask you that question, what good things do you have in your life? How do you respond?
I mean, in my brain, it goes right to my family and the things that I'm blessed with. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I call them the big things: our family, our friends, our jobs, our home, other big things that impact our lives in a grand way. And I thought of that certainly. But then I started thinking about, what about those seemingly insignificant parts of our lives that actually bring us those daily jolts of joy? So I thought of the show Daredevil on Netflix. That had just dropped when I was in the hospital. And Jeff, besides flying in from Michigan and staying with us, he also bought me an iPad. So I quickly downloaded Netflix and I started binge watching that show. And while it's a fantastic show, I mean, I have the Ninja Turtles and Deadpool behind me, so I'm a geek. But that show was so much more to me because it offered me a true escape from my own struggles. And then I thought about how the nurses' station was right outside my door, because if I needed anything, they were literally 2 steps away. And then I thought about the hospital pizza. Now, Kelly, what is your experience with hospital food?
Not the greatest.
Yeah. And that's what people usually say. The pizza at St. Mary's was phenomenal. I just remember it being fantastic. Maybe that was because I hadn't had pizza in a month when I finally had some. But that's always a positive memory for me. And it's something that people may not think about, but it's something that helped carry me through the day. And so I started doing that even after my hospitalization. And I'm looking around and I'm saying, okay, what do I have in my life that I am thankful for, that either helps me, brings me joy, or I'm just happy to have it? Like, for example, I look up here and I have this question mark box. You may recognize it if you ever played Super Mario Brothers.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I got it from from Minnesota's largest candy store. And I'm never going to open it. I don't really like this kind of candy, but I just like it because it's so cool and geeky. And, I've always loved Super Mario Brothers games. I think about door hinges. Door hinges are a magnificent invention that we take for granted, but they help us walk through walls. They help invite others in. They help keep others out. Mm-hmm. They're magnificent. They're just a wonderful creation that helps us do our jobs every day. And then I think about my right armpit. My right armpit, Kelly, is covered in skin grafts. Skin grafts, you may not know, are non-porous, which means they don't sweat. I have not had to use deodorant on my right armpit for almost 8 years. Do you know how much money you save by only using deodorant on one armpit?
Yeah.
Not a lot. And that's okay. But it's just the fact that I can say that and I get a kick out of that. And once in a while, I'll catch myself doing this. That's silly. But it's something that I enjoy and it's something that I appreciate. And so I ask people, what is something, or what are a few things that you can pick out right now? Don't even think about it, that you are thankful for. And just point at them and think of a reason. Like, I am thankful for that stapler because it helps keep papers together. I am thankful for that speaker because I get to hear you on it. And it's also shaped like the Millennium Falcon. So that's also really cool. I am thankful for my duct tape covered mouse, which I've had for a while. It's beaten up and it's been held together by a foreign object. It's pretty symbolic of me, actually. It's beaten up, but still does the job. And so the more we can look at things around us and find value in those objects, the more we realize that we are already rich, no matter what our bank accounts say. And so that was the first step towards me developing a greater sense of gratitude, was understanding how much I already have to be grateful for. And then second question I asked was, well, I know now what I'm thankful for, but now who am I thankful for? And again, when I ask that question, people usually respond family and friends. Yeah, and that's how I did. But then I thought about the people around me that maybe I didn't interact with that much. For example, not only did my brother fly in from Michigan to visit us for a week and a half and help out, but my best friend from college, Dave, and his wife Beth flew in from Montana for a weekend. My in-laws, certainly Bill and Dee. Bill actually was a chaplain in the hospital. So not only did he see me on a personal basis, but he visited me on a professional level 3 days a week in the mornings. And he also brought me lunch. He brought me Subway, which was really a blessing, because I like Subway. And then Dee, my mom, would visit me. We would play Scrabble on the iPad. And that was fun for us to connect that way. And then, of course, the nurses. Not only are these nurses, top notch, they work at the Mayo Clinic, but some of them actually became good friends of mine for the time I was there. I have a quick story to share about that. When you are in the hospital for a long time, and you may have seen this, Kelly, they sometimes put a poster on the wall called the Getting to Know You poster. They have questions, based on the patient's interests. And one question was favorite movie. Now, Kelly, I already told you I'm a huge geek. I have comic book heroes on my wall. I quoted Monty Python. I have a wedding ring that has "I know" written in Arabic, the Star Wars language. I'm not sure you can see it real well there. But there you go. All right. I am a huge geek. So you could probably imagine what I put as my favorite movie. That's right. Blazing Saddles. I thought of what movie could I watch over and over again and not get tired of it. Well, that's the one. So I had them write Blazing Saddles on the poster. Well, one Monday morning, the head nurse, Chris, she practically runs into my hospital room. She's all excited for some reason. And she said, "Chris, I was at a garage sale this past weekend and I saw this and I thought of you and here it is." She bought me a DVD copy of Blazing Saddles. I am just a part of her job. I am an item on her to-do list. But the fact that she not only recognized that movie as my favorite movie out of the hundreds or thousands of things she has to read every day, but she even went out and bought it for me and then just makes that copy of Blazing Saddles one of my prized possessions. Not because of the market value, but because of the love and friendship in which it was given. And so being able to see someone not for, yes, I value Chris for how she impacted my life with that simple gift. But the fact that she was able to pick that detail of my life in a place that had nothing to do with her job is a skill that I greatly appreciate about her. And I have a small skill to teach you and your listeners right now, Kelly, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah. I call it the AAA. And it actively augments your appreciation of someone else. See, AAA. And so first, what you need to do is you need to think of someone in a social circle that you both share, and then take them out of that circle momentarily. Then you look at that person in as many positive ways as possible. How does this person affect the world around them without any connection to you? And then finally, you put that person back into that social circle And then you just sit back and think about how lucky you are that you share a connection with this fantastic person. I like to use my wife, Becky, as an example. Yes, she's my wife, my partner, my best friend. But then I take her out of that social circle that we share. And I see that she is a wonderful mother, a loving daughter and sister, a brilliant teacher, a great musician, a talented athlete, a as big of a geek as I am, though she hides it a lot better than I do. She is a benefit to the community as a whole. I put her back into that social circle, and she is still all of those things. But on top of those things, she's also my wife, my partner, my best friend to boot. How lucky am I? And we don't have to do this only with our families and friends. We can do this with people we barely know, acquaintances, strangers, maybe even people we may not get along with very well. And I think it's especially important to do this activity with people that we may not agree with or we may not even get along with, because if we can see them past our own view and our own history, and we see, wow, this person and I may not see eye to eye, but they love their family. They're good at some parts of their job. Maybe I don't agree with some parts of their job, but other parts of the job, they're really good. And you know what? They pay their taxes. They're upstanding citizens in many ways. You know what? I can respect this person more for how they make the world around them a better place. And maybe it would make a stronger connection between us two. Maybe not. But at least I can find a way to be more friendly with this person. We don't have to be friends with everyone, but we can be friendly with everyone. And I think that goes a long way towards developing a stronger community if we just do that.
Yeah.
And then I thought about that last question. What could I do to give others a reason to be grateful? After I thought about what I was thankful for and who do I appreciate, I thought about that last question. How could I give back? How can I give others a reason to be grateful? In the hospital, I was busy recovering. That was my job. Get better. But it was when I was discharged that I could really take steps. I could literally, in some cases, for example, when I started running again, I started picking up trash on the road or on the sidewalk or in other people's yards, as long as I didn't get too trespassy. People don't like that for some reason. I also started mowing the lawns of my neighbors or snow blowing their driveways or walkways if they were gone. And then there's the classic opening doors for people. We often overlook how powerful that is, because when you think about it, you become a human doorstop. You are stopping everything you are doing to let someone else go in front of you. And for some people, that might be the first time they felt seen all day. And if we as humans want one thing, it's to be recognized, to be seen. And holding a door for someone is a great way to do that. That costs zero monies, just a couple seconds of your time. And one example I love is, I'm not sure if you could see the picture back there. That picture is of me meeting Weird Al Yankovic. Now, I don't know your experience with Weird Al Yankovic, Kelly. Do you know any of his songs?
I do, yes.
Okay. Well, I hold him in great esteem. He is one of the greatest musicians of our time, and I am not speaking hyperbolically about that. He is wonderful, better live than in his albums. Well, I had a chance to meet him in person. So we go through this big long line, and I get up to my turn to get a picture with him, and he says, well, okay, what are we doing? And I said, I want you to hug me like you're happy to see me. So he does. He does a big old bear hug, and I do my best to not freak out with giddiness. I try to pull off a look, and I'll hold it up for you here. You can see I'm doing my best not to look, look just enthralled. And he even writes down there, to Chris, thanks so much for meeting me. Weird Al. So, one of my favorite pictures of all time. So we get the picture taken, and then we get in another line to go and get it signed and to talk. And this is where the magic really happens, Kelli, because I am one of hundreds of people waiting to talk to him. I walk up to the table, he's sitting down, and for 3 minutes, I have his undivided attention. He is listening to me, he's asking me questions, and I'm talking with him. It's as if I was the only person in the room. And I know that sounds cliche, but that is how I felt. He wasn't looking at his watch. He wasn't checking the line. He wasn't getting, asking an assistant for something. It was just me and him. And as much as I love this picture, that interaction with him means so much more to me because of the time and undivided attention he gave me. And if we could give that to someone every day, who knows how it can impact them? And it didn't cost him any money to do that. But it means the world to me. And so, if we can, keep our thoughts about what we already have and value what we have in our possessions, if we can appreciate those around us for how they impact the world, and if we can give others a reason to be grateful, no matter how much it costs, we can make the world a better place. And as I like to say, we can become superheroes in our own communities.
I love that. And thank you for sharing your story and your experience. There is so much goodness in there that my head is like, oh my gosh. But some of the things that really stood out to me, and oftentimes what I talk about too, is the gratitude, right? It can be something really super simple, even having a toothbrush to brush your teeth, or having a roof over your head, or maybe it's having the faucet, having water in your faucet, being able to get water out of your fridge, or those little silly things that we don't think. I liked your the knobs, right? It's not something you think about, like going in and out of a door. It's not something you think about, but it's definitely something I'm grateful for, to be able to go in and out and be able to lock it or open it or welcome people. And so I love that you pointed on those small things that we can be grateful for, other than the big things that often come into our minds. Yes. And then also just shifting your mindset of taking that person and taking them out of the circle, thinking about all the things that they are good at, or that you've noticed, or all of the things that make them who they are, and then putting them back into that circle. But then also reframing or shifting this perspective of somebody that maybe you don't get along with or you don't like. I think that was really important too, because we don't have to always like everybody. We also don't have to agree with everything that people do, but we can. And I think that would be huge to even change society as a whole, is how can we look at this person in a different light versus maybe the hatred or the dislike that we have towards them. How can we look at them in a different light, and then also put them back, I guess, where they where in our minds they want to live, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm total dork too. I have like all my little toys that sit on my, like, Baby Yoda is my
Oh, nice.
favorite. Yeah. This is
Yes. Hey, Grogu.
the Bop It version, and it's pretty
Mhm.
fun. So I have like all my toys. I actually have a whole shelf that's up above these shelves that is full of toys. Just because they make me happy. They're things that I'm grateful for and things that I can look at any moment in time, whether it's a stressful day or I'm whatever's going on, right? I can look at them and they make me really happy. And I think that's really important to have those small things.
Yeah,
So,
it's funny you say that because on my left, I have about a dozen Transformers. I'm again, huge geek. I started collecting Transformers again. Now that they're like better made than they were previously, they're more posable and stuff. And then for some reason, I started collecting rubber ducks.
okay.
I don't know
Yeah.
why, but my son and I were going through a couple boxes, and I realized, wow, I have 24 rubber ducks. I mean, I have Batman rubber ducks, the Flash rubber ducks. I think I have the entire village people of rubber ducks. And I live in New Ulm, so of course we have rubber ducks and lederhosen. But
Mhm.
it's just funny how many of them I've acquired, and so yeah, I started collecting rubber ducks accidentally.
That's
But you're
awesome.
right. It's like, how funny is that? That's such a Bob Ross
Right.
moment. It's such a happy accident that
Yeah.
happened, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so important. I mean, just to have that, like you said, the attitude of gratitude, and you never know like how well you do, not that you never know, but it helps you shift from those like negative things that are happening into the positive. And I love that. I mean, although this was a huge part of your life that happened, you really look at it more in the lens of what am I grateful for and what are the things that made me who I am today, and you're able to share that with everybody and anybody that listens. So,
Yes, yes. And something I want to point out really quick, Kelly, is that not only did it increase my gratitude and my positivity, but it also increased my resilience. Because once I realized how much positivity I had in my life, and so I had so much to be thankful for, that I started pushing the envelope. In fact, I remember asking my doctor after my first discharge, my post, so what are my limits with this new body? And he said, Chris, you're the first marathon runner that's ever contracted NF that we know. So you tell us. So I took that as a green light. And as of today, I've earned 4 lifetime personal running records in the 5K, the 10K, the half marathon, and the 10 mile. I've earned my first degree black belt in Taekwondo. In fact, there's my certificate right there. I earned that last year. And I'm currently training to qualify for the Boston Marathon. I'm running a marathon actually in Rochester, the city that basically saved my life, on May 13th. And I like to tell that to people not as a bragging point, but to illustrate that your life is what you make it. And yes, you can go and play the song and say, "Oh, I was had to go through all this tough stuff," or you can turn that on its head and say, "You know what? Yeah, ended up trying to take me out and it lost. So let's see what else I can do."
yeah.
And I think by doing that, you're showing gratefulness, you're showing gratitude towards your survival, and I hope I am inspiring others to do great things, because that's what has inspired me, was those people who helped me out. I want to show them my gratitude by showing them what I can do with this second chance.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's just really important to be able to share your story as you are now speaking and going on podcasts and telling everybody your story, because your mind is very powerful and it's very powerful for the positive. It can also be very powerful for the negative. So,
Yeah.
being aware of your thoughts and your thought process. And like you were saying, is that you could have very easily gone down the road of allowing your mind to take over because you're in this hospital. It's not going the way that you thought it was. You have all these skin grafts and all these things happening to your body that you don't know what's going to happen, but you chose to look at the positives and listen to your wife and hear the stories, and now even translate it into positivity and bringing that to so many others. So that is just really, really incredible.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So if anybody wants to follow your story, how can they do that?
Well, Kelly, I like to think of myself as a simple guy, so I like to keep it simple. Chris DT Gordon. That's all you have to do. ChrisDTGordon.com is my website. At Chris DT Gordon is my Instagram handle. You can find me on Facebook at Chris DT Gordon. And I'm also on LinkedIn under the same name. And you can go to YouTube and find the Chris DT Gordon channel, where I post my Scar Bearers podcast episodes. They're also available on Apple Podcasts, where you cast your pods. And yeah, I have other videos on there as well. But yes, Chris DT Gordon. And it's really funny because when I started my speaking venture, I was thinking, well, how are people going to find me? There are lots of Chris Gordons out there. But I was listening to a podcast called The Speaker Lab, and there was a gentleman who used his middle name. Well, I have two of those. Why not use both of them? So that's why I have the DT in there. I like to say it stands for darn terrific, but it's actually Daniel Thomas.
I was going to ask, because there's the website. So if you want
yes, thank you.
And I was going to ask, because I actually have a friend named Chris Gordon. And when you had originally signed up, I was like, no, that's not the same. I'm like, not the same one. But yes, so Chris's website is right below here. So if you want to find him, go
right there.
Yep, somewhere over here.
There you go.
Go to his website. And I love that you added in your middle initials to add those. And that's what I go by my first and my middle name now for my professional name, because I just got married in July, and it's confusing what you go by these days. Yeah. So
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm like trying to figure out, what is my name? I don't know what my name is anymore, but figure that out. But I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And I know you gave some really amazing tools and tips and tricks of people to really be able to hone in on that resiliency, the positivity, and the gratitude. Is there anything last that you want to share?
Yes, I do, real quick, Kelly. Pass on perfection and go for greatness. We are inundated with pictures and facets of perfection on billboards, in ads, on YouTube or on TV. But if you think about it, those visages are snapshots at best. They don't last long. Even the perfect game that's pitched in baseball, no one goes and pitches another perfect game 3 days later. All right. It is fleeting. However, if you focus on pursuing your passions and your goals with consistency, diligence, and perseverance, once in a while, you might reach perfection, but you will always be great.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you being my guest today.
Well, thank you, Kelly. Again, I greatly appreciate the time to talk with you and to share with your audience.
Yeah, awesome. All right, y'all. That was another amazing episode of Mental Health Mondays, where we talk to guests who are either professionals in the mental health space, advocates of mental health, or those that live with or experience a mental health challenge. And like Chris just said, it's not about perfection. I know I say that all the time. Really just getting the information out, and we can have that attitude of gratitude and really focus on those small things. It doesn't have to be ginormous things, but you can focus on those too. That's the best part of it. As a reminder, mash down that button if you're watching this on YouTube. Make sure you follow us. And if you feel like this information would be valuable for anybody else, please make sure you share it. And lastly, as a reminder, BCC Evolution is a 501c3 nonprofit. And to bring all of our education and this programming to you, we need your help. And we've been talking about it for a while now, but again, you can text Climb for Mind to 44321, and that goes to support mental health and suicide prevention education, but it also goes to help support me in doing the 29029 Everesting Challenge coming up this August, doing 30 miles up a mountain over 36 hours, the biggest challenge I've ever done in my lifetime, along with my friend Philip. We will be climbing the mountain 13 times, and it will be mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all those things wrapped into one, but all of it goes to the name of mental health and suicide prevention and prevention education. And as a reminder, if you donate $100 or more, you get the chance to put the name of a loved one or somebody who might have died by suicide, or somebody that has struggled with a mental health challenge on the front of our shirts. With a donation of $1,000 or more, and if you're a company, you get to put your logo on the back of our shirts. So keep that in mind. There's lots more perks that go into it too, even with your donation. And we just recently added, with a $5,000 donation or more, you actually get a trip to Mexico. We partnered with a really amazing company that is giving us Mexico trips for any $5,000 donation or more. So, I mean, come on, win-win. And it goes to support mental health and suicide prevention education. So don't forget, come back next week because we have another amazing episode of Mental Health Mondays. Have a great night.